The American beaver, North America's largest rodent, is hands down the best restoration partner in the West, storing water, slowing floods and fires, and creating habitat for everything from butterflies to moose to salmon to ducks. Unfortunately, beavers' recovery from near-extirpation in our region has been slow and uneven. More beavers on the landscape would be a huge boost for biodiversity and climate resilience. But in order to manage this species for these benefits, our local land and water managers need to better understand what's limiting their establishment and survival. Is trapping the problem? Poor or degraded habitat? Where are beavers setting up shop and thriving, and where are they mysteriously missing? To help answer these questions, our region needs to put beavers on the map, and we need your help. Your participation in the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey will help local land managers pinpoint where beavers are. This is a first step to understanding where they're not and why. We also hope that in the course of this project, you'll develop an appreciation for these animals. They're cute for one thing, but more importantly, they have exactly the right skill set to do a lot of good for our Northeast Oregon ecosystems.
Howdy! I'm Christina DeVilliers, Connections Coordinator for Greater Hells Canyon Council, an environmental nonprofit based in La Grande, Oregon. Our mission is to connect, protect, and restore the wildlands, waters, native species, and habitats of the Greater Hells Canyon region, ensuring a legacy of healthy ecosystems for generations. As Connections Coordinator, I work to enhance ecological connectivity in our mission area. Ecological connectivity is the ease with which animals move through the landscape. Well-connected landscapes are increasingly important as climate change alters suitable habitat. Working on connectivity and on climate resilience led me directly to this effort to help find Northeast Oregon's beavers. I'll tell you why a little bit later in the module. But first, on behalf of all partners on this project, thank you so much for joining this training module for the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project. In this module, you'll learn why local land managers are interested in beavers and their work. You'll learn what beavers need in order to thrive and where you're most likely to find them. And we'll give you step-by-step instructions for how to participate in the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey. Community partners on this project are Grand Ronde Model Watershed, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the U.S. Forest Service. Together, with your help and the support of the iNaturalist citizen science platform, we hope to learn more about beaver numbers, distribution, and habits in Northeast Oregon. At the moment, we don't have a baseline understanding of where this species is operating in our home landscapes, or how many of them are here. Our Beaver Presence and Activity Survey is a first step to filling this data gap. As a participant in the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project, you will document signs of beaver presence and activity, along with noting a few key habitat features that will help us to understand the character of the stream reach where beavers are active. This module will teach you how to do that. Once we have a better understanding of beaver distribution, our project partners and other land and water managers will have a baseline for directing future research and for making management decisions related to this species and its important ecological work. Let's listen to Laura Navarrete describe conditions and goals related to this project from her perspective as a wildlife biologist for the U.S. Forest Service.
Hi, I'm Laura Navarrete. I'm a wildlife biologist on the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest. Historically, beavers played a large role in the forested ecosystems of Northeast Oregon. By changing the hydrology on the land, they created habitat for other mammals, amphibians, birds, insects, and fish. For the Forest Service, they're considered a desired condition or a desired future condition. As managers of the land, we are charged with managing habitat to provide sustainable services for our local and national communities and functioning ecosystems that provide us with clean water, viable populations of native wildlife, hunting, fishing, and birdwatching opportunities are all services that the presence of beaver positively influences. Unfortunately, past history of timber and grazing has degraded riparian habitat and decreased the number of beaver on the forest. Though surprisingly, we have limited information on population and distribution. As important as beavers are as habitat engineers, we have not done formal surveys on the forest. The discovery of beaver dams is often opportunistic, though we do know that they seem to be geographically limited and isolated colonies that don't persist. Now, the Wallowa Whitman want beaver on the forest, and one of the first steps in understanding how to better manage their habitat to encourage their presence and their persistence is a better understanding of how many there currently are and what habitat they are using. We are excited to be working with Greater Hells Canyon Council on this citizen science project.
Thank you, Laura. And I'll just add that I've talked with a lot of land and water managers in the past year or so, and nearly everyone who manages waterways on riparian corridors in Northeast Oregon is interested in beavers, I've found. So it's high time we get a better understanding of where they are and aren't, and how we might encourage them where appropriate to set up shop in streams where they can thrive and work their ecosystem magic. The data collected in the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey will be available to project partners and other restoration practitioners and land managers interested in beavers and their work. If you're listening to this module and you're interested in learning more about the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project, becoming involved, and sharing the data, I hope that you'll reach out to us. My email is christina@hellscanyon.org. Now let's learn a little more about how the American beaver improves landscapes. What are beavers' ecological effects? Why are restoration practitioners, wildlife enthusiasts, ecologists, hydrologists, fisheries managers, and so many others in Eastern Oregon and all over the U.S. excited about working with beavers and learning more about them? Let's hear some answers from partners on this project. Ian Wilson of Grand Round Model Watershed will start us off, describing how beavers shaped our landscapes and why this animal is so important as both a partner and a model when we're trying to restore waterways.
Hello, my name is Ian Wilson. I'm the Wallowa County Project Coordinator for the Grand Round Model Watershed. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the legacy of beavers in the landscape in America, and more specifically the Pacific Northwest and Northeastern Oregon. We know historically that beavers were pervasive on the landscape, somewhere in the order of about 400 million beavers in the United States. Those numbers were drastically reduced through fur trapping and near-extirpation of this species. This is important because these species had a lasting effect and legacy on our landscape, primarily through their dam building life history strategies. When beavers build dams, the sediment that gets washed down the stream is stored, and then that helps build these wide, broad, and very fertile valleys that we've seen all over North America. So through successive dam construction and over millennia, it really transformed the landscape in America. It's hard to imagine now because we only have a much smaller number of beavers than we did historically that kind of changed, but we still see the effects today. So the way that beavers are important for restoration is they are keystone species and ecosystem engineers, meaning that the activities that they do, like dam building, is that creates a lot of fish habitat, like this pond you see behind me. These ponds are great for storing carbon, for storing sediment, and also creating critical off-channel fish habitat for endangered fish species such as spring chinook, salmon, and summer steelhead in the Snake River Basin. So beavers have had a very long and lasting effect on our landscape, and they're very important for restoration practitioners such as myself to try to mimic what they do and also encourage them on the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. It's pretty amazing to think about the fact that beaver activity helped to create the big valleys where most of us live in eastern Oregon. On this creek in Utah, beavers' ability to green the whole floodplain and produce habitat complexity is very evident. And all that greening benefits more than fish. Mike Hansen is going to tell us why. Mike is a wildlife biologist who recently retired from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife after a long and distinguished career.
So let's talk about how beavers benefit other wildlife species. In order to understand this relationship, first we should talk about how beavers and willow relate to each other. Their relationship is called symbiotic, and that means that both benefit from the other. In the case of beavers, they feed on the willows, and they use the sticks to build their dams and their lodges, as you see behind me here. The willows benefit because when beaver build dams, they slow down the stream flow and spread the water out over a much larger area of the valley bottom. And willows love to have their feet wet. They like to grow in saturated soils, and that's what beaver dams provide a lot of. So each of these benefits the other. So in terms of other wildlife, many of them are dependent on willow, either entirely or partly. In terms of the bigger ones, moose is a clear example. Almost all they eat is willow. And if you don't have willow, you won't have moose. Other mammals would be deer and elk. They both eat willow at some times of the year. Other things like otters and mink would live in the water, live in the ponds the beavers provide. In terms of birds, you have waterfowl, ducks and geese in particular, several species like the ponds, and they nest around them. And songbirds, the smaller ones, especially yellow warbler, willow flycatcher, they both specialize on willow habitats. They live there, they breed there, and they feed there. Other species would be fish. You have salmon and steelhead. Their young smolts like to be in those ponds. They can hide there from other predators. And there's also a number of insects that like willow habitats. There's a number of butterflies, several wasps, beetles, even aphids, and ants that feed on the nectar that the aphids produce. So there's a whole variety of animals there that focus on these willow habitats that are enhanced by beavers.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike emphasizes, beaver activity creates the conditions for so many other species to thrive. Everything from caddisflies to chorus frogs to bears benefit from beaver activity. Beavers create in-stream and floodplain habitats that support literally thousands of other species. And by storing water to release later in the season, they can keep creeks running colder and deeper for longer, too, which benefits everything that needs to drink water or swim in it, or irrigate with it, for that matter. As for me, I got interested in beavers because, as I said, I'm working to improve ecological connectivity in our home region. As I've talked with scientists, landowners, and land managers about wildlife habits here in Northeast Oregon, I've learned that nearly all our native species move, migrate, eat, or find shelter along the paths that moving water makes. In the spectacular mountains and canyons that characterize our region, you can follow water 8,000 feet down, from the peaks of the Wallowas to the depths of Hell's Canyon, over just a few dozen miles. In a steep landscape like this, perennial waterways, streams and rivers, the canyons they've carved, and their rich riparian zones are the most important corridors for nearly all wildlife. This is true throughout the interior West, and the steeper or drier the landscape, the truer it is. This means that the quality of habitat in riparian corridors is all important for a huge number of species, both as they are living and moving now, and as they migrate to adapt to climate change. For good ecological connectivity, we need complex, dynamic riparian systems that recover quickly from disturbance, store their own water, and support the widest possible array of species. Some species, you could call them umbrella species for connectivity, have outsized impacts on the quality and dynamism of riparian systems. Beavers are one, for all the reasons Mike and Ian just shared. So restoring them to the landscape is one of the best ways that we can support connectivity. Salmon are very important for connectivity too, because they bring great pulses of nutrients from the ocean back into headwaters every year, feeding humans and animals and fertilizing the vegetation in riparian corridors that are so important for so many species. And beaver activity is great for salmon, especially for juveniles. For all these reasons and more, including their ability to store carbon in wetlands, to store water for slow release later to keep streams running all year, and their creation of lush, wet streamside fire refugia, Northeast Oregon land, water, wildlife, and fisheries managers are very interested in knowing where beavers are, and eventually interested in welcoming them back home. In this section of the module, I'll explain logistics of how to participate in the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project. All you need to participate in the survey is a smartphone, an iNaturalist account, and an interest in riparian systems. First, if you haven't already, please create an account for yourself at iNaturalist.org. You can create a dedicated account or use your credentials from Facebook or Google. And if you have a smartphone or tablet that you're able to use in the field for data collection, go ahead and download the iNaturalist app on that device. This survey will be most efficient and accurate if you do have a smartphone or tablet. But if you don't, a camera, a notebook, and a good map will do. You can enter your data on iNaturalist.org later and estimate the location. Just keep in mind that photos of beavers or beaver sign are required in order for you to contribute an observation to the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project. If you're a nature nerd, I think you are going to love the iNaturalist platform for many reasons besides beavers. iNaturalist is a citizen science app that is great for helping you to identify the animals and plants you encounter and for exploring the biota of the places where you live and play. And the site is a hub for a friendly community of folks who are interested in deepening their ecological literacy and assisting scientists from all over the world in gathering data to address some of today's pressing environmental questions. Now that you've got an iNaturalist account, please spend a little time familiarizing yourself with the website and the iNaturalist app. You can edit your profile, explore others' projects, and add observations of species you've photographed. Try uploading a picture of any plant or animal from your yard or your latest walk. iNaturalist ID suggestions are pretty good. I've learned and confirmed a lot of species IDs with the help of this platform. Others in the community will verify your sighting, and then it will become research grade, i.e. it will become data that scientists can use. Now that you've learned how to add an observation, navigate to the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project. On the website, the easiest way to do this is just to search for the project in the search bar. Click on the project and click Join the Project on the top right-hand corner of the screen. Or from the home screen of the app, click More in the bottom right-hand corner, click Projects, and search for Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey. Click on it and click Join. Great, now you're on board. Finally, in order to gather data for this project most accurately and efficiently, please make sure the camera on your phone is geotagging your photos. If you have an iPhone, go into your privacy settings and make sure location services is set to on or while using for your camera and for the iNaturalist app. On an Android phone, open the camera app, tap the menu button, tap Settings or Other Settings or the cog symbol, and select Store Location and Pictures, Add Location, or Geotag Photos. It's a little different on different phones. The iNaturalist app will likely prompt you again to allow location services while using the app. Now, every time you take a photo with your phone, the phone will automatically use its GPS capabilities to record the location of your photo. Now Now you are ready to contribute observations to the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project. Say you're out fishing. You notice a slow spot in the creek that, upon closer inspection, is caused by a barrier of sticks woven together and packed with mud. Ah, a beaver dam, you suspect. Now what? It's simple. You'll take a few photos, you'll look around the site to answer a handful of questions that will help us to put your find in context, and you'll make sure to submit or sync your data. That's it. It'll take 5 minutes in the field to document the beaver activity and 30 seconds to upload your data later. The iNaturalist app works even if you're in airplane mode or out of service. You just have to remember to sync your data later. You can be more or less systematic about your participation in this project. We enthusiastically welcome any sightings you may happen upon while pursuing other activities. If you see a chewed tree on the side of the road and you only have 2 minutes, take 2 minutes to snap a couple of photos and fill out as much of the survey form as you can. Or, if you want to be a beaver surveyor extraordinaire, you can systematically survey a section of a creek or stream. Some of you agency folks will be out doing this anyway, and we hope you'll keep an eye out for beaver sign as you pursue your other tasks. In that case, if you're systematically looking at a contiguous stream segment, we hope you'll tell us that in the notes field of your observation. So if you were fishing or surveying for Chinook and covered 2 miles of a stream, you might write, "I walked upstream for 2 miles starting from point X and saw one old beaver dam and no fresh sign." Either way, the process for recording a sign is the same. Before we jump into details about the survey process, I just want to add a quick note about surveying on private versus public lands. While the process for recording data is exactly the same, if you survey for beavers on private property, please ask permission to be there and to document the beaver activity, and inform the landowner that several agencies will have access to the information. That does not mean the data is public. The exact location of your observations will be obscured from the public and available only to project partners. We encourage you to ask private landowners, even your friends, to sign a permission form if you are going to collect data on their property. This form can be found at hellscanyon.org/beaver surveys, as well as on the websites of other project partners. It's okay to document activity visible from a public right-of-way, like a road, without permission. There's no expectation of privacy on land that is visible to the public. Again, the goal of the Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey project is to get a better sense of beaver distribution in our corner of the world as a baseline for possible completely voluntary restoration and research efforts in the future. Most of the best beaver habitat in Northeast Oregon is on private lands, so we hope that landowners will help with this effort, but of course, it is up to them. Okay, let's jump into the nitty-gritty of the survey process. What kinds of beaver activity are you going to document? Beavers are mostly nocturnal, so you're probably not going to see very many of these animals going about their business. If you do get lucky enough to see one, that is great, and we really hope you can get a picture. Most of the time, you're more likely to encounter evidence of their activity, especially chewed and peeled sticks, cut or partially cut shrubs or trees, and dams. Other possibilities include tracks, scat, lodges, bank burrows, canals or paths that beavers have made through the water or on the banks, and dams that have been abandoned. For most of us amateurs, unless we're paying very close attention, chewed and cut sticks and trees and dams and lodges are the signs we are most likely to notice. In this video, Mike tells us how to distinguish chew marks on a stick.
It's a typical foot stick. You can see all the little tooth nips. So they just take the bark off all the way along as they go, and they'll cut it off in order to get it, and it's a good size to hold and to use. But that's this and smaller is typical for their food.
These are the nuts and bolts of entering your data. When you see evidence of beaver activity, like the chewed stick that Mike just showed us, for example, open up your iNaturalist app. tap Observe or Add at the bottom of the screen. Take a photo or select a photo of the stick. Accept the photo if it's a good one by tapping Next, and then click the plus icon to take another one. It's great if you can take a couple of photos, at least one of the stick or the other beaver sign in its context, so we can get a sense of the habitat and stream characteristics, and then at least one close-up of the sign you encountered. If you encounter several different signs in one place, try to get a photo that captures all or several of them, and record in the notes field that you saw several different signs at that one location. That's really good information, but you don't have to record multiple observations for the same site.
For what did you see, make sure to choose Castor canadensis, American beaver.
Your phone will automatically record the location of your sighting, but this part's important. Make sure you set the geo-privacy to obscured. You and the project coordinators will still be able to see the precise coordinates, but for everyone else, your sighting will be fuzzed by about 10 kilometers. This is important because it is legal to trap beavers in Oregon, and we don't want the beavers we find to become targets.
Next, click Projects and navigate to Northeast Oregon Beaver Survey, which hopefully you've already joined. Select this project and you'll see a list of questions we hope you'll answer with a quick, careful look at the beaver sign you found and around the site. First, please identify yourself with an agency if you belong to one or are volunteering with one. This helps us to correlate your beaver observations with other data you may be gathering. Tell us what kind of beaver sign you found. Briefly describe it. Estimate the age of the sign. Your best guess is okay here. Fresh dams usually have fresh sticks on them, and of course, freshly cut wood is much brighter than older wood. Now let's zoom out a bit and think about habitat.
As you are looking for beavers, it's worth developing an eye for the kinds of streams where they are most likely to thrive. Some of our Northeast Oregon streams are unlikely ever to support beavers because they're dry for part of the year, because they're too steep, because ponded habitat freezes deeply in the winter, or because the bank is too rocky for beavers to get their paws into, to find mud to chink their dams, or to make a bank burrow. It's still worth keeping an eye out on streams like this because sometimes you'll get a glimpse of beavers passing through. Other streams have much better habitat and are just begging for a closer look. Let's listen as Shane Talley of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife explains what beavers require in terms of habitat.
Beaver habitat in Oregon comes in many forms, but a few basic requirements are necessary for a beaver to become established. A pool of still or slow-moving water and a stable food source. The pool of water for beaver lacks a strict definition. It can be a slow-moving water in a river or creek, or back eddy, a slough or irrigation ditch. It can also be an established pool like a pond or a lake. Beavers also have the ability to construct their own pool by building a dam. This slows and backs up the flow of water, creating the pool. In any situation, the pool needs to be deep enough for the beaver to provide the beaver a place to rest, escape from predators, and store food. Also, in colder climates, the pool needs to be deep enough for the beaver to allow the beaver to move around under the ice. The food source for beaver again lacks a strict definition, and differs among seasons and climates. In warmer climates and seasons, roots, tubers, and shoots can be consumed, but in any where they're present, species of willow, alder, cottonwood, poplar, and aspen are consumed. Some of these food sources are directly consumed, others are stored for later use, and some pieces can be used for construction, but remember that not all beavers build dams and or lodges.
Thank
Thank you, Shane, for that important reminder that just because we don't see a dam doesn't mean there are no beavers around. As a matter of fact, some beaver colonies will build dams one year, abandon those dams the next year, and burrow in a bank, somewhere with a sufficiently deep natural pool. If you're just getting your feet wet thinking about riparian habitat, a good rule of thumb for looking for beavers is look for streams with willows, cottonwoods, and aspens. These species are all related and are ideal food species for beavers in our region. Beavers will occasionally eat other kinds of trees, but they have strong preferences. If you see a stream or pond whose riparian border contains a good showing of one or more of these species, that's a good place to survey. Mike sent this photo to me a few months ago with the tagline, "Now this is what good beaver habitat looks like."
Now, that stream's not in Oregon, but it's a great visual. Let's listen to Ian briefly describe what we might consider to be a reference reach of high-quality beaver habitat here in Northeast Oregon.
Well, this could be looked at possibly as a reference reach. Some of the indicators that would suggest that would be the river being able to activate its floodplain at bankful events, and then also the wood recruitment, the gravel recruitment that you're seeing behind me. You have a lot of the desirable species of willows and riparian vegetation, so it'd be nice to look around a little bit more to verify that, but it looks pretty healthy from a first glance.
Thank you. As you are filling out the habitat fields in your survey, take a careful look at the quality of the stream and the vegetation surrounding it. If you don't know willow, cottonwood, aspen, and alder, try to learn them with the help of this module and the internet and your friends before you go out into the field. These data fields are important. But ultimately, if you're in the field and you aren't confident of the species of the trees and shrubs around the site, it's better to leave these fields blank. Choose the no data option. Just try to get good context photos. Same with the species the beaver was munching on. If you're not sure, leave it blank and get a really good photo.
If there is a dam, estimate the dam height in feet from the bottom of the stream and the size of the pool that the dam backs up. As for stream bank and stream bed substrate, for that one, it's useful to have some rules of thumb for size. Silt refers to fine-grained mud. This is what beavers prefer. Gravel refers to loose stones up to about the size of an egg. Cobble is loose stones larger than eggs. And bedrock is rock, of course. And woody debris describes a stream bank that has formed in a flood or other disturbance and has not yet rotted down into soil. You can only choose one option here, so choose the one that best describes the stream right next to your sighting. Finally, look around and see if you see evidence of some kinds of common habitat disturbance. For example, you might see signs of grazing, logging, or flood. You can only choose one option, so choose the one that seems most prevalent or most recent. Or, if you don't see signs of disturbance, you can choose none.
And that's it. You've done your survey. Thank you. It took me much longer to explain it than it will take you to do it, especially once you get the hang of it and learn your shrub and tree species if you don't know them already. Just please make sure that when you are back in service, you open the app back up and tap sync to share your data with the project. It's better to do this sooner rather than later, just to avoid technology snafus.
Very importantly, in closing, we hope you'll have fun with this project. The American beaver is a fascinating animal, and as you chase beavers across the landscape, we know they'll surprise and inspire you with their architectural ingenuity, local variations in diet and construction materials, and dramatic modifications to the landscape. I'll leave you with a short clip from my most recent beaver surveying adventure, where all bets were off, which was very exciting.
I'm standing here in this completely amazing beaver complex with coal. It's been built in the middle of the trail above the Imnaha River on a stream that really should be too steep. You see it's in the trail. And they've been eating alder, which is quite interesting and unusual, although they're also enjoying the willow, as you can see. And it looks like they've also been eating raspberries. There's a bunch of very fresh chew sticks. This is at least 5 tiers of pools. It's pretty dense, so we haven't explored the entire operation. This largest pool is in the trail. We can see there's another dam right above this one, another one above that, and this beautiful dam. You can see another 2, at least one, no, another 2 below here. So this is quite a little complex on a stream reach that we might guess would be too steep and too aldery, but there's willow here and plenty of mud. It was nice clear water before I started trekking through it. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to capture some of the amazing habitat features that they've created and also used in this spot above the Imnaha River. Again, on behalf of all our project partners, thanks so much for tuning into this training module. We hope you're feeling ready to go and jazzed up about looking for beavers in Northeast Oregon this summer and fall. Trekking around riparian corridors is a great way to social distance and see some awesome wildlife while you're at it. The best time to survey for beavers is July through October. We welcome sightings at other times too, but the more you're able to get out this summer, the happier we'll be. If you're a fisherman, a hiker, a hunter, or someone lucky enough to be out doing field work in our beautiful region, we hope you'll keep an eye out for chew sticks, lodges, and dams along the streams where you're hanging out. You may begin to notice positive associations between beavers and the game or wildlife you're interested in. If so, we'd love to hear about it. Please take pictures, and feel free always to reach out to me, Christina DeVilliers, with any questions, curiosities, or opportunities related to this project. Be well, everybody. Thanks. Take care.